let's just begin, first of all, with what is happening with Kenya and Somalia, of course, a row, and what does it portend? Because now, information that we have is this, that we are facing as a situation where the country can be landlocked because of this particular dispute that now is ongoing. We are still at the International Court of Justice as well. So let's just hear, first of all, from your understanding, Ambassador Esses Mwancha. Are we likely to face this situation if it goes on?
Well, I wouldn't be that pessimistic, but of course it's a very serious situation. And as you know, that the International Court of Justice has now set a date for hearing, 13th of September.
13th of September?
Yes. And if that be the case, then the court in its own wisdom will find a way of, making sure that these countries, there is either win-win, or if there is a dispute is escalated, then it's going to drag out for a long time to come. And I don't know whether there would be any need of any diplomatic moves now that the court has come in. CS Monica Chuma was meeting Parliament the other day, and of course she made a presentation in camera. So we don't know what that comes out with. But to me, I can see that yes, this matter is now gone out of, as I would say, the genie is out of the bottle. We have to manage the crisis. And managing the crisis may mean, and I think that was a right move that Parliament and the CS took, that let's not talk too much, let's not escalate the matter, let's the due process then go ahead. If we are able then to convince Somalia that we take the matter out of the court, because to me, that is where we should have been. This is not a matter that should be settled in the court, because the court, there will be a loser and a winner, but if it's out, normally mediation is a better option. And let's hope that Somalia will accept that option. I hope this is the trend, this is the line that we're going to take in the meantime.
All right. Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, Dibal, if the question is Kenya going to be landlocked? Will Kenya have a shoreline? Yes, it will still continue to have a shoreline if ICJ gives that maritime waters to Somalia. Will that affect Kenya's maritime ownership and the entry of ships into the ports of Mombasa and Lamu without any problem? That is where the problem is, that if ICJ is going to award that waters to Somalia, then on the outer limits of the continental shelf, that is 350 nautical miles, then you see that that line that is coming down, and the one that is from Somalia, that Somalia claims, and the one that starts from down in Shimoni going on a straight line with Tanzania, they meet actually somewhere around 300 nautical miles of the continental shelf. This means that any ship that is coming to dock in the port of Mombasa and Lamu, if ICJ is going to award Somalia that territory, that ship will need to seek permission from, or will need to inform Somalia or Tanzania that they are coming into the country. So in that respect, yes, and that's where it complicates maritime trade for Kenya. Kenya will still have the shoreline, the 12 nautical miles, the 200 miles EEZ, the exclusive economic zone, except that I think 24-25% of that will be taken. But on the outer limits, the continental shelf, then that's where the problem is going to be for Kenya. And I guess, and this is what we have consistently been saying, that this problem can be resolved bilaterally between Kenya and Somalia, and we encourage the two countries to negotiate, and we also encourage Somalia to take this case out of ICJ.
All right, so let's hear from Peter Kagwanja on this. The issue has been on the equidistant and also the parallel principle. That is the biggest now two options that we do have so far. How will these two sort of approaches maybe impact Kenya negatively or positively?
The first problem we have here and why this issue has become such a sensational issue and aroused a lot of emotions is because there is little trust, particularly from the African side, not Kenya alone, on international, justice system, because it's literally a civilizational question. And now the equidistance principle, where lines or rather imaginary lines across waters, as opposed to run 35 degrees from the mainland, has been applied widely in the Caspian Sea. And if you don't apply that rule in the Caspian Sea, then many countries will not have an outlet to the Mediterranean, finally to the wide open sea. So for other countries, run like that so that you can get an outlet into the sea. So it's a question of justice for Europe. Now, what is funny is the application of the same equidistance principle in the open sea of the Indian Ocean. And what is also intriguing is the emphasis on this equidistance in a region where all lines negotiated so far, negotiated not through the court, ran parallel east. So if you look at the border between South Africa and Mozambique, it runs parallel east. The border between Tanzania and Mozambique, it runs parallel east. And there are also negotiations within that country so that certain territories that are traditionally within the domains of certain countries are respected. Now, our negotiation with Tanzania has taken into account Pemba and Zanzibar, so that because even if we insist on parallel east as it is now, we'll get a chunk of Pemba, which is part of Zanzibar. If now Somalia insists on the parallel, the equidistance, the principle internationally is that that principle will have to apply on all the boundaries in the Indian Ocean. So what the court will be doing if it rules in favor of that is open a Pandora's box of multiple, what we call domino effects of conflicts. Because Kenya then, in order to have the open sea, would require to insist on this principle in regard to Tanzania. What does that mean? We get the whole island of Pemba, from what I have done, and a portion of Zanzibar before we get to the 350 nautical miles into the sea. That means we retain our continental shelf and we retain our open shelf. But where does that leave us with our relationship with Tanzania, which is good so far?
That's the question.
Then Mozambique, you'll have to insist on that. Tanzania then may not want to deal with Kenya and insist on the same on Mozambique. And then we are all going, Doctor, that way. The final country that will say no to this will be South Africa.
So we're actually seeing
so the court,
a long drawn out
the domino effect.
Yeah, the domino effect of that ruling, whatever is done, is going to be major. And it is no longer about Kenya alone. Kenya is insisting on a principle, but it's also insisting on something else, negotiations, so that we look at the peculiarities of our own boundaries, which the court may not have a universal principle to apply. So really, it's not a dispute between Kenya and Somalia in that sense. It is a conflict of principles that need to be resolved and can better be resolved by negotiation between the two countries, not through the courts.
Not through the courts.
Because if
negotiation is actually the way to go.
Because the court is going to use what we call in legal terms the precedents. And the only precedents we have with this, what we're calling equidistance principle, is the Caspian Sea. And I have explained why these lines have to go that way, because the entrance to the sea, which kinds of open landlocked countries into the open seas, will itself, have to go that way in order to allow countries have access. Yeah, because if you insist on parallel east or parallel west, then it means a number of countries are not going to have anything other than big swimming pools outside there. What is called the shoreline is an extended swimming pool.
So we have a problem when it comes now to the issue of, for that matter, being on the horn of a dilemma, when it comes to issues of integration. Now we have a spirit of EAC, then we're trying to integrate, we have, a common parliament amongst us. But now we can see whichever way that this will go, and you say the avenue of the court is not the best way, let's negotiate. But if now Somalia insists that, yes, we want to use the courts, because we've argued here before, and we've said, you know, that even the president of that particular court is from Somalia. So even maybe this particular judgment might be skewed towards Somalia. But in the spirit of integration right now, when we're talking about the East African community and the African Continental Free Trade Area as well, what is this portending for us as, you know, a community?
Debal, I think from what has been explained, the best route for Somalia, or even Kenya, and for that matter, even Africa as a whole, is that this matter is negotiated outside the court. In fact, the protocol, the UN Charter itself, did not envision that this matter be in the domain of the court itself. Mm-hmm. If you look at the spirit of that charter, it was envisioning a mediation kind of process. Because the court process is adversarial, that when we go there, we'll be going there as like enemies. So it's not going to help these countries. Somalia would be well advised, and Kenya is taking that route too, that let's take this matter out and talk about it in a more civil manner, because it has high emotions. Mm-hmm. For Somalia now, I mean, the stakes would be there, and the leadership would be looking back at the population, would be pushing them to say, you can't cede our land to Kenya. The same matter, the same way Kenya, and you can see the cascade. So the best way out is to bring this matter out. And I think this is a matter, that's what we said earlier on. Diplomacy now must be applied in all levels, using the two countries direct or other means, so that they can get out and talk to each other.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but here is why really they must bring this case home to be negotiated. First of all, the AU principles, for a very long time, they've always asked African states to use existing channels within the continent. Correct. To actually deal with these issues. Now, many gas and oil experts have said and are predicting that area that you see there, that's the final, that's perhaps the final frontier or the final discoveries of major oil reserves globally are actually found there.
Major oil reserves globally?
The final discoveries are just there. Not the shaded line that is in dispute. I mean, that's part of it. So that whole region, from down Lamu all the way to Berbera. Yeah. And perhaps keeping a little bit, then going down to Sungu, southern parts of Tanzania to Beira, all the way down. So these are the final frontiers of major oil discoveries. Now, what does that mean? It means that the big boys are not going to allow African countries to actually touch this oil. We are talking some of the European countries that have been at this for a very long time, some of the countries in the Middle East that will think that if there is more oil here than there, then they must somehow make sure that this oil doesn't come, is not drilled, because it's going to also affect prices. And it means that these are the areas that is going to be, if the resources are going to be used well, will be far much more developed. But obviously, major oil companies in the world, which are Western, have a big eye on this. And this is why we said right from the beginning, this is an issue that it's not just an issue for Kenya and Somalia. I think African countries have got to take this very seriously, so that we bring these issues home and discuss. Otherwise, major instability is on the way if we just allow external actors to interfere.
And are we facing maybe this particular agitation that we are in right now? Do you think in any way, from your own assessment, is being instigated by some of these external, actors as well? That someone is pushing the envelope through Somalia to make sure that we have this sort of dispute, escalating between Kenya and Somalia, that their foreign interest as it is?
I think the main issue here is who want Kenya and Somalia to have differences, and what are the reasons for that, and why would they get out of their way to finance Somalia's case in whatever. As you know, Somalia is just recovering from long wars, and we really appreciate what is happening in Mogadishu in terms of the economic gains that are being made, what the president, the foreign, I mean, the prime minister in that country are doing to bring back Somalia into the economic fold. But that said, Somalia cannot, by itself, afford such a protracted case like this one, which has gone on since 2014 and gone through 3 presidents. In a country which doesn't even have the historical memory in terms of the bureaucracy and the systems, and the systematic way that some of the things are being done. If you look at the depositions, what was deposited in these courts, Somalia posted over 5 volumes, each at 250 pages. Kenya only posted 1 volume of whatever case with 1,175 pages. I need to check my record. But it's 1 volume, which is smaller than 1 single volume of the Somali in the case. And when you read through, as I have done, through these volumes and see the articulation, even the language used can tell you where the lawyers are coming from. Even the language, because it's so queenly, it's so, clear that you can know where they're coming from. Obviously, intelligence sources will tell you that it's true. Just try to read. They're on the ICJ website. It is not like it's something that is.
But we have learned Somalians who are in the diaspora as well. So maybe they can. Most of them were speaking the Queen's English.
No, not really. We understand. We went to the ICC and you saw the articulations, and we had the Queen's lawyers, whatever they're called. We know what. In scholarship, language speaks volume, because an Australian writing a document and a Canadian writing and a British, there are worlds of differences, you can tell. Anyway, the payment of it is traced from the Middle East, a country. The country paying for the case is traced from the Middle East, no names. Now, so as Dr. Mustafa rightly put it, there are geopolitical interests. And as early as 2004, it was published in the Journal of Foreign Affairs that the lands adjacent to the Rift Valley, where the Rift Valley cuts even across the Red Sea, coming through Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Mozambique, are going to be the largest frontier of oil discoveries in the world.
Oh, really?
And are going to have the largest, the largest. In fact, the author of the article argued that the problem is not the oil, is whether the region has the governance capacity to manage that kind of wealth. That was the question that was raised. And he gave statistics, including the wealth that is going to accrue to the region by 2015, because he was writing 2004, 2005. Now, I shared that concern at that time, and I think what we are now seeing here is the incapacity of Somali government, the incapacity of the Kenyan government, or the Kenyan elite and the Somali elite, to know that first and foremost they are Africans who need to manage their wealth.